wife says, there's no relationship between your physical appearance and the things you do, right? So like in my head, I'm there. So anyway.
Prateek, you married well.
I think your wife's trying to tell you you've got a very wise head on your shoulders. I think it's a compliment. I take it as a compliment.
Oh, yeah.
Sure. Well, welcome to episode 4 of The Stream, an unedited, unscripted, free-flowing conversation with guests who reject the status quo with a bias for change in the world of water and beyond. And this week, I'm pleased to say we're talking about all things artificial intelligence, or AI, and we're pleased to welcome our guest, Prateek Joshi, who is the CEO of Plutoshift. Prateek, come in. How are you?
Hey, Tom. I'm good. How are you?
Very good. Very good. Well, let's bring in Will Sarni too, because we've all got the memo about the shirts.
You're now on the Will Sarni Hawaiian shirt program for the summer. So Tom and Prateek, happy Monday. Good to see both of you. As always, Prateek, it's probably a little early for you out on the West Coast. You've been up for hours working, I know.
I've never slept. You never know, right? So.
There we go. Well, the next time we do this, we'll do it 3 a.m. Pacific time or something.
Yeah, I've been up all night thinking about what to say, all the clever things I'm going to say. So, yeah.
Wow, no pressure then. No pressure.
And, yeah.
Well, before we get going on all those clever things, just a quick line of housekeeping for regular listeners and people who are watching as well. We're just going to add something in this week. So for anyone who leaves us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, we're going to give you a personal shout out in the next edition. So yeah, we're going to try and gamify it and welcome the feedback you guys can leave us as well. So right, let's get started, because I think me and Will and Prateek, we've got a lot to say, and perhaps ask you, Prateek, because you are no doubt an absolute expert on AI. I mean, you've authored how many? 13 books, Forbes 30 under 30. So I mean, I want to kind of get started by asking, why water?
Yeah, water, well, my interest in water kind of goes back a long time, even before I knew it's like a real world topic, right? So I grew up in southern India in town, and growing up, like, water was a little bit of a luxury. Right? It's not something that you turn on the tap and it's there. No, it's just once every couple of days, and you get water and you store it and you use it. So that's my relationship. That's how my life started. That's my relationship with water. And I thought, okay, maybe that's how it is everywhere else in the world. That's how people live, right? Once every 3 days you get water. And then I realized, oh, wait a minute, that shouldn't be the case, right? It's an essential thing to live, to survive. And so growing up in India, there are many different issues that I could have latched onto, but water just stayed very close to my heart, mostly because of where I grew up. And that turned into a real passion after I grew up. So water is, for many reasons, it's a topic very close to my heart.
And Prateek, your timing is impeccable in terms of focusing on digital, in particular AI in the water sector. And Tom and I have been talking about the transformation of the water sector and how incredibly critical digital technologies are, and in particular AI.
Yeah, 100%.
And I want to go back to you're under 30, Prateek. Wait a minute.
Oh no, I turned 30. I did. Yeah, that was like.
That was 30 under 30 a couple of years ago. I'm not trying to age you or say how old you are, Prateek, but
I am. In my head, I'm 45 already, so it's I'm pretty old. My wife says, there's no relationship between your physical appearance and the things you do, right? So like in my head, I'm there. So anyway.
Prateek, you married well.
I think your wife's trying to tell you you've got a very wise head on your shoulders. I think it's a compliment. I take it as a compliment.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
I don't think that's how she would put it, but thank you. Yes, I'll relay that, right? That's how you're supposed to look at it. So yes, thank you.
We may have your wife on next. Who knows?
Okay, so a deep I think we could say you've got a good appreciation of the value of water and perhaps not having water as well, right?
Mhm.
So then, why the move to California? Because you've worked in Microsoft in India, from what I saw, right? And then NVIDIA in California. So why the jump?
Yeah, and I came here to do my master's, and then I moved to the Bay Area, Silicon Valley, because that's what every engineer or techie does. But no, more than that, it's more like I came here because the one thing I liked growing up in India is that, at least the way I looked at it, in America, the upside is not capped. I don't know if you can relate to it, but basically growing up in India or even in some different cultures, there's always it's nice, but you don't, if you want to do something that's drastically different from what you're supposed to do, there's a lot of barriers. But here, the really good thing that I liked is the spirit of entrepreneurship, and basically if something works, there's no like artificial constraints imposed, right? So that was the one thing that motivated me to, okay, if you want to do something, let's come here. But also when I moved here, it's just a lot of innovation happening, right? It's like when you're young, you feel like doing things and you want to see them come alive, right? Like I don't want to work on a 15-year long research project. That's just not who I am, right? It's great for people who like it, but for me, I need ideas to turn into something that I can touch and feel, and something that other people can see too. So that is what kind of motivated me to get into what I'm doing today.
And Prateek, I want to sort of run with that. Your personal view in terms of you wanting to, have this bias for action, which Tom and I have baked into basically our theme with the stream. In that, can you talk a little bit about grounded AI? Because one of the things I find really fascinating is that AI in itself is a bit of a mystery, and you really took a point of view that, well, it doesn't have to be. It has to be very tangible in terms of value creation and what it delivers. And I know you talk about, the last mile, and you've really branded it as grounded. So can you talk about that pivot, because it sounds like it's really very much who you are?
Yeah, it's and the reason we use the word grounded is specifically to make a point, right? Because when I was studying AI, even in my first job and second job, and even now, AI is always looked as a theoretical concept, right? It's in textbooks. People love publishing research papers about it. There are big talks. But when it comes to the physical, the implementation, the reality, it's just not, people think it's still very abstract, right? Like, for example, simple example, we all use Excel, right? It's a thing we can touch and feel. It just works, right? And adding numbers, it just works, right? Taking an average of 20 different numbers, it just works every single time. And that has happened across many different technologies, be it, there's email, right? Email, every time you send an email, it gets there, right? It's as simple as that. But there was a time, remember, when this was a brand new thing where, hey, people are working on this brand new thing called email, and it just, it may or may not work. So what we wanted to do with AI is take it out of the textbooks and put it in the hands of the people, meaning people who actually could use it as a tool for their day-to-day job. And that's why we use the term grounded, because we want to ground AI and make it work in practical situations. And what's a practical situation, right? An operator walks into a facility, right? And they have a couple of questions, right? What happened? What deserves my attention? That spike happened. What caused it? These are simple questions, and they need answers to this. And today, it's a pretty much it's a fight, right? You log into 5 different systems and you download some information onto your Excel. You spend 5 hours on it. You're frustrated, and then you just there's nothing happens. And that what we wanted was AI is a tool that can solve that, and quite easily, if I may add. So that's why we built what we call the grounded AI framework to do that. And part of it is the last mile is a lot of times people get wrapped up in their own technologies, right? They build amazing, cool tech, they build simulations, they build algorithms, and then nobody uses it, right? Nobody cares. The pretty graph, nobody's looking at it. So what we decided is that the last mile is going to be a focal point of our what we call grounded AI, is that numbers on the screen should be converted to action in the real world, right? That last mile, bridging the gap, meaning if that information is not being used, it's not the fault of the operator. It's the fault of the system for providing useless information, right? Or maybe the information was not timely, or maybe the information is not trustworthy, right? Many things. So that's why we solved all of that with this framework, is that everything that we display, either it gets used, in which case it gets to stay on the platform. If nobody uses that, we axe it, right? That's why it's a very brutal process of what we show and what gets used.
This one last question, Tom, if you don't mind. No guarantee the last, but
please.
So this is a total setup, but this reminds me of a book I read, The Technology Fallacy, that talks about the human side of digital very generally, and one of the conclusions from the research and by the authors is that companies need to stop doing digital and be digital. So it's moving towards being digital, which is part of the culture, part of the strategy, as opposed to it's a thing. It's like, decades ago, companies were talking about having a web strategy. Well, no one has a web strategy now. So, I mean, I really love how you think about it, because to me, it's better aligned with, the human part of, the private and the public sector with respect to water, and really addresses one of the key challenges. So, now I'm done, Tom. Oh.
No, please carry on to what it is. No, I think it's good. You're kind of making AI quite tangible, and like I said, it's been seen as more of a concept before. But I was taking a look at the white paper that Plutoshift co-authored with Water Foundry about the kind of, in terms of relating it to water, the 3 areas. So you've got almost the water source, so quantity and quality, then the treatment, and then the kind of the distribution or the usage. And it's on that last part that you can really use it to improve engagement with customers and consumers. But this kind of ties into a survey that you guys did, right? I think you asked, was it 250 manufacturing companies about what they see as AI? And I think Will touched upon it, and you did on the last mile. But what else kind of came back? Because I'm just interested to know what just the state of play in terms of adoption. I think there's no doubt about it. People recognize the benefit, the speed in which AI can help them in terms of analyzing and acting on data. But what else do you kind of hear when you're speaking to customers and companies about using your system that they say, actually, we're not quite ready?
Yeah. One of the things that we did when we talked to 250 people, just wanted to understand, okay, obviously this is 2020, you are collecting some form of data, the pressure, temperature, flow rates, everybody has it. You don't set up a big plant and then not store simple information, right? So, okay, so they have that data. And then what we found was 84% of the people said that they can't act on the data intelligence, meaning they have the data, but 84% said we can't act on it because I don't know how to get to it, right? So what that's kind of it's sort of a very interesting question, is that we always thought, okay, I mean, it's not easy to get to data information, we get it, but 84%, that's a big chunk, right? And that's sort of the context of, if you look at the spectrum of what we call the data intelligence journey, meaning on one end, you have people collecting data on pen and paper, right? And on the other end, we have very high-end, sophisticated databases and machine learning systems running. On that journey, people are still they want to get on it. They have started, but it's still a very much it's people are trying to make sense of it. And then even within the companies that are doing this, right? Only 17% said that they are actually implementing AI, meaning that projects are in the implementation phase, meaning a giant chunk of them are still pontificating on AI. And Will's laughing. Yes, that's that's right. Yeah, they're pontificating, and I've met these people. God knows Will has. When people just sit and they love having meetings after meetings, and just nothing ever changes, right? So even when it comes to implementation, people are still, they don't just get started. And okay, so let's say now that at least some people are doing it, right? What I'm saying is that some people doing it. Now you would think that out of the people who are doing it, they have everything aligned, right? But what we found is that within that, 43% said, I don't know why this AI project is happening in the company, right? I mean, it's happening. They're implementing something. I just don't know what the goal is, right? Imagine if you're rowing a boat, you better make sure everyone on the crew knows where you're going, right? You just don't get in the water and just start rowing around. It just doesn't make sense, right? And 43% is a big chunk, right? It's like, if you don't know, and that's a very big part of when you build an AI system, is that it is built to achieve a specific goal. It's not a generic random tool, right?
And Prateek, I love how you segued into rowing, and I think we can probably talk about that for a while. Only kidding. We won't do that to those folks that are listening. But you bring up another, what I think is a really critical point, which is, doing something digital, an AI program, without implementing it to support your business strategy, whether you're, a utility or, an industrial client, is really a waste of time.
Yeah.
I mean, unless it aligns with your business strategy and business, even for the utility sector, then you're not going to get value. You're going to tax the workforce, and, of course, there's no return on investment. So again, it's that you only do it if it drives some business value.
100%. Yeah. And that, yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you go.
No, I was just agreeing, is that a lot of people think it's like, they think goal is like, why do we even need to set a goal? Like, isn't AI supposed to just work? We'll figure out the goals later, right? I've seen many people say that, and it just doesn't make sense, right? It's the goal is in fact, I would say start with the goal. Forget about the systems data. We'll figure it out. But just we got to figure out what is it that you want this tool to do first, and what is it? How is it going to drive the business forward? And then you work from there.
Is there any correlation, because we spoke before about perhaps shifting from public to private and between the two sectors? Is there any correlation you see on that? I love the word you use, pontification, in using AI and the meetings to have meetings, which I think all of us have been in organizations like that before. But is there any correlation in terms of the size or the type of company you see the levels of pontification?
Yeah, no, it's the dynamics, or at least because at Plutoshift, we've been doing this for since 2017. So we have had, at least I've been fortunate enough to have many discussions with both public and private sectors, many decision makers across the board. And to take a simple example, right? So today we focus heavily on the private sector or the industrial sector, but for an early stage company like ours back then, like when you are like a year and a half old, for an early stage company, you need customers or companies who have some bandwidth to take risks, right? When you have a new piece of software, you need people who have that bandwidth to try something new and see if it works, right? So you need people who can take risks. You need people who have a healthy fear of competition, meaning if you don't do something, your competition will kill you, right? That fear almost actually it drives a lot of businesses, right? How are you better than your competition? And third is if you try something and it works for this small team within the company, there should be a big upside, meaning you can deploy it company wide, you can take advantage of scale, and then it's a real step change in your business. Now, when you think of municipal treatment plants or municipal facilities, they are regulated, which means they're fairly risk averse. They are more or less like a local monopoly. So, they have some drive to be good at what they do, but competition is not nearly as fierce as the private sector. And also they are small, meaning there's one facility, and if you do really well, you have to go somewhere else and start from scratch all over again, right? So it's this dynamic that makes it difficult for an early stage startup to engage with the municipal entity, right? As opposed to a private, like an industrial company, where there are always risk takers. They always try new piece of technology. If that works, they want to use it. They want to be better than the competition. The scale obviously is huge. So the discussions are kind of, it's not that municipal entities don't want to do it. It's just the constraints are fairly high for an early stage startup to meaningfully engage, and especially early stage startup is defined by growth, right? We can't engage, or rather, you shouldn't engage in a 2-year cycle when you're an early stage company. I'm sure Will has seen this time and again over the last years.
Well, I mean, and I use the word business to even refer to public utilities, because, and even NGOs, nonprofits, because fundamentally it's a business, and it just has a different set of constraints.
Yeah.
Challenges, opportunities, and, certainly the utility sector in particular now has a number of challenges, but I think there's really a number of exciting things that are going on. And Tom, you've had several conversations with utility leaders that are absolutely convinced right now that digital is essential going forward to deal with issues of sustainability and resiliency and so on. But Prateek, I agree with you. I think that for a startup, maybe particularly in the digital space, you've got to focus on sectors that are very in tune with innovation, not risk adverse. Speed to adoption. They understand the value proposition and so on. It is what it is. It's just a different set of constraints, but. I think there's some really cool things going on in the utility sector also right now with adoption of digital technologies.
And what I've also seen is that it's not that it's not that they don't want technology. I mean, they do want technology. Technology, it's everywhere. It's more like if we show up with 10 case studies, right, they're way more likely to engage, right, than if you show up with 0 case studies, as with any decision maker who's looking at a new piece of technology. So the good thing about not good thing, but as we entered the whole pandemic situation, and back in early March, it started really the lockdown really kind of took hold. It highlighted some of the acute needs that just this entities need to manage their business, right? And that includes both public and private sectors. And it's that heightened awareness that's making some of the visionaries in the municipal and the utility sector to kind of push the boundary a little bit, right? Because it's if they expand their tolerance a little bit more, they'll see a lot of technologies that can solve their problems today, right? Mm-hmm. And obviously, you just need some framework that allows them to experiment. And as Will saying, there are always the visionaries and the forefront of innovation, who are, given the right circumstances, they will embrace new tech, new
Right.
digital tech. Yeah.
I think you need those digital ambassadors within the utilities,
Right.
certainly from my experience, that can champion that transformation on the software, the hardware, and the culture, and really push it forwards. And Will, you're right. I mean, from conversations I've had, the last 2 months have certainly accelerated those ambitions. And companies that have made the investment or have those ambassadors are really benefiting. But I had a interesting conversation with a British startup involving AI, and she was talking about this culture, and particularly within public, utilities. And there was a question from some of the kind of perhaps older engineers about or dismissing it and being perhaps a little bit cynical of it. She said, okay, well, why don't we have a in-house competition in terms of competing the AI system in terms of detecting a leakage amongst different audio files of the water pipes compared to the engineer. And it was after this competition where the AI system won that then the whole team was like completely impressed, like, okay, whatever you want to do, we're with you guys. And it was almost like, I think, coming back to that cultural change that's needed, it depends on the individuals, whether they'll be accepting and go beyond seeing it as a competitor, essentially.
Right. This is a really interesting conversation in that so much has changed over the past few months. And if you look at the industrial sector and the utility sector, they're really not monolithic. I mean, there are certainly some generalizations that, well, yeah, sure, the industrial sector is quicker in terms of adoption of innovative technologies and so on. But if you go back to the International Water Association paper that is not a plug, but we were involved with that, IWA and Xylem, they identified leaders in adopting digital technologies. And the more I think about it, based on this conversation, that subset of leaders looks a lot like the industrial sector. So those are the ones that adopted digital technologies because it supported their business strategy. They adopted technologies because they were willing to pilot with startups. And, they had either a board and or a CEO that said, yeah, this is going to be our strategy. So it's interesting. And it's probably worth taking a look at that now, sort of revisiting and seeing how much of that subset of the utility sector is starting to look like the industrial sector.
Yeah.
Maybe Prateek, this is part of a business, strategy for you, but
no, actually, I think you make a very astute observation here is that the business be it a utility or a company, right? I think that the underlying how you set it up drives the actions of people who run it, right? And that's why I think if you look at, as Will said, be it at the forefront of the utility sector or the industrial sector, right? If you look at it as a business to run where you want to keep your customers happy, you want to be bigger, better than you were yesterday. So if that's the mandate, and there are many utilities across the country, or at least the people who run it, right? I've met them. They're always thinking of, okay, how do we make this better, right? And you can almost tell, okay, they're doing this because they're here, right? If they're in the middle of somewhere else where it doesn't really matter what you're doing, they won't. There's no reason for them to try or risk anything. But there are people on the forefront who are looking at it as a business, and a business needs to grow, business needs to be more efficient, and I think that drives the behavior of people who run it, and that we need more of that, right? Because that sets it up nicely to thrive. People need to be able to take risks, so that because there's an upside. Yeah. And also,
where do you kind of always like to? Well, me and Will always say we like to have people on the show that are futurists and kind of very much, which you are, looking forward. But where do you kind of see AI going, particularly within water? How far can we kind of push the boundaries with this?
Yeah.
Because I think on a conversations I've had, you kind of look at the consumer facing side, and there was the video that's been shared by a lot of people of, you know, the Google assistant that can basically make a phone call to a salon or a restaurant and completely almost mimic the human voice using the nuances of conversations and the ums and the ahs. And it's impressive, right? This was a couple of years ago, so it's no doubt moved on. But where do you think, because people listening to this are ultimately interested in water and sustainability, how far can we push it moving forward?
There's a concept in AI that I like to highlight, is that if within any given system, if AI works really well, you wouldn't even know it's there, and that's when you know that AI is working, right? So simple example, right? Search engine, we use it every day, billions use it every day. On average, if you conduct a survey and ask them, hey, you go to google.com, you type your stuff, you get something, do you think that's AI? I can guarantee you a majority of them will say, oh no, it's just you type something, you get it. I don't think it's AI, right? It's massive AI, right? And so Google, what they did, they perfected the art of making AI so straightforward and nice and buttoned up that it just works every single time, right? So in water, when it comes to water, that is when we'll know that AI has reached its boundaries, that when people use it every day, they don't even know it's AI, right? Because people think AI is like a robot sitting next to you, ordering you and maybe trying to kill you. That's when they know it's AI. Right? That's not the case, right? AI is a simple tool, and what we are doing right now is we are on a path where AI is becoming part of day-to-day work. And also, there's another concept that I'd like to highlight is it's not human versus machine, right? Meaning, and again, I'm not talking about the philosophical discussion of, hey, robots versus humans. No, it shouldn't have to be like, hey, AI predicted the leak better than the human, so AI is better. No, AI supports micro decisions, right? That's how you make it part of your day. Meaning, you as a human, you have certain tasks to do every day. You have to make many micro decisions, and AI just supports and accelerates that. Instead of making 5 decisions a day, it'll help you make 50, because guess what? It's doing all the heavy lifting, and you can just quickly get through the day and let AI take care of those tasks. So this concept of the enhanced decision making by just augmenting humans with this tool, that is how AI will do. Because the thing is, it's like going to google.com and expecting, hey, AI should type itself and search. No, you have to do the typing. You have to type, I want X, and then AI. So basically, it is becoming, or it should become a part of the workflow, and it's that combo of human and AI that I think will really, that is what's happening. That is a way forward. It's not human versus AI, and that's the path we are seeing forward.
Prateek, it sounds like my last question, Tom, I promise.
Please carry on.
Prateek, this might be our last podcast.
No, not at all.
So, I've seen more and more people talk about augmented intelligence as opposed to artificial intelligence. Is that kind of what you're getting at? And how comfortable are you with augmented versus artificial, or, like, who cares?
Will, do you know what? We're on the same. That was going to be my final question, honestly. Can I just add to it? I was going to say,
yes.
Not only augmented, and then Prateek can answer both at once. But then, what's the difference between AI, AGI, ANI, and ASI? And that was going to kind of be a final cheeky little curveball to keep you tested. So maybe you can incorporate the answer to both Will and mine's final point.
All right. So starting with Will, right? So artificial intelligence and augmented intelligence. Actually taking a step back, artificial intelligence is the goal, and machine learning is the vehicle to get there, right? That's just starting point, right? So there's a goal, and ML supplies the algorithms, the framework to just drive towards that goal. And when we say augmented intelligence, it's basically just knowing that humans on a, let's say, like, if there are 10 numbers, right? A human can quickly look through the numbers, make sense of it, move on. If there are 10 million numbers, human just knows what to do, but 10 million, it's going to take forever, right? And so that's where you need tools to do part of the task that will support our decision making, right? Instead of guessing, if I tell you, hey, within the 10 million numbers, the average is this, median is this, the max, min, I'll give you a few different numbers. Quickly, I know, oh, okay, it makes a lot of sense, right? I'll make the call and I'll move on. And then it keeps happening over and over again. So AI, again, artificial intelligence is, again, it's the goal, meaning if a system can behave intelligently based on the data being measured from the surroundings, that's just this AI, right? So augmented intelligence is this. And then when it comes to AGI, right, artificial general intelligence, and again, that's where people get bogged down a lot, right? Anything, let's say it's AI and there's all the other terms. I'm just going to bucket that. The thing is, it's a lot of companies go down this path of we want to build one model, and we're going to apply that to healthcare, manufacturing, e-commerce, and 17 other topics, right? It's just AI is not built that way, at least not today, right? You can't expect AI or actually a generic AI model to do everything for you, right? It's just not built that way, and that's why we always couple AI with a goal or a task, right? If you take the goal out, it just doesn't make sense to me, right? For a system to make sense, AI system, it always needs to know, okay, this AI system is built to predict the next clean, all right? This AI system is built to predict the demand for the next 24 hours, right? So if you take the second half out, it just doesn't make sense, and people always ignore that because it's less glamorous, right? They want to just say that, oh, AI magic black box, isn't it supposed to work, right?
So it needs to be focused. It needs to be kept on the straight and narrow and given something to drive towards.
100%. And that is how we have that's our POV on AI. And today in 2020, we just want to make AI work, right? And we don't want people to know that's working. That's when I'll be really happy, right? I don't want people always walk on eggshells like, oh, it's AI. I want to be, I'll be mindful of it. I don't want to bother it. I don't want to be rude to it. No, that's the thing. Yeah, it's you shouldn't even know that. Right?
It's successful when it's working and you don't know it's there. And actually, Will, Katrina from our guest last week said the same thing about that blockchain is successful when you don't have to explain it and it's working fundamentally. So there's a few comparisons too.
Yeah, there's I'm not sure if it was Isaac Asimov or Heinlein, another science fiction favorite of mine, said that advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And I want to get the quote and I'll send it to you guys, but I love that because Prateek, to your point, we should know. I mean, do I really want to know? No. I want to talk into a thing and have it, whatever.
I read a really interesting article about, not kind of related to this, is they said, I don't want to know what goes inside a tool like Zoom. I mean, it's Zoom. Actually, it's crazy complicated to make video call work across different people. It's really complicated, but I don't want to know. I just want to click a button and just thing pops up. And the thing is, and that's the behavior of all humans in general. We are at the forefront of tech. And yet, look at the tools we use, right? We use Slack, we use Zoom, we use Airtable, we use simple tables and CRM tools. Nobody wants complexity. Nobody wants that, right? So the point is, you need a tool that just works, and it should do one thing really well. That's all we want. And that's the way we live is proof that nobody, and yet people who build AI think that they do AI for themselves, right? They do really complicated stuff. They build these amazing things. And when nobody uses it, they're shocked and they blame the companies. And that's what I tell them, that why? Like, you're doing it for yourself, you're not doing it for the customer, right? And And I think it's part of it stems from the perception of AI, meaning if people think that if I don't make it really complicated, people won't know it's AI, and then they'll think less of me, and it's a vicious cycle. And that's why we think when people won't know it's AI and still use it every day, that's when we'll know it's worked.
I think when the process becomes a verb, successful, right? Or to Google something or to Zoom someone, and you just use it without even thinking about the process behind it, right? So I think that's what's inevitably going to happen with the AI tools being developed.
100%. So it's going to be to Plutoshift. Is that where you're going, Prateek?
Yeah. That's the plan. Like if within one of the main or core goals when we started Plutoshift was, AI works so well in ether, be it search engine, e-commerce, but within the industrial world, there's a big gap. And one of the core reasons why we started Plutoshift was to bridge that gap. We want to be that company that made AI accessible to the big audience on the front line, who could really use this, right? And more than that, it's almost my life's work. Meaning, I really want people to use it because it's such a useful tool. It's phenomenal, right? So useful, and on top of the resources it'll save, be it energy, chemicals, water, on top of the time it will save. Instead of spending 5 hours, imagine spending 5 seconds on something, and this happens across millions of people. But more than that, it's just like if we were to build the pyramids today, we'll do it slightly differently like when we did back then. So, and that's what I say is that people will still engage in meaningful activities. It's just it won't be 5 hours of fighting with primitive tools.
It's a nice way to wrap up. Actually, I think we started with your journey. Oh, Will, final question.
Oh no, wait. I thought we had like the most important question teed up, which is, what's your favorite whiskey?
Oh yeah, my favorite whiskey is Macallan 12. That's what I like to drink. That's it's almost like the second one is not even close. So yeah, that's what I drink all the time.
And Tom?
I'm not a true whiskey expert or fan, but I have a bottle of 12-year-old Glenfiddich downstairs that was given to me as a present. And that's a nice drop. I try to enjoy it with my father-in-law who comes over at Christmas. Tends to be the time where I drink most whiskey.
So you married well also.
Purely based, the first question was, is your father-in-law a drinker? And then based on the answer, okay, let's go out for a drink. No, I'm joking.
So we're all incredibly shallow. That's wonderful to hear. So I'll throw mine in Yamazaki. Yamazaki 12, but I love 18.
Nice.
So,
actually, it's one of my things to do or to-do list is to go to Scotland and do a tour. I'm a big fan of Scotch, and maybe after this ends.
Yeah, I'm kind of getting the idea of some kind of AI whiskey roadshow. I mean, who's in? Are we in? I think this is a great idea.
Prateek doesn't sleep. I'm confident he'll work on it. Monday night, and Tuesday we'll have it.
I'm sure some of the whiskey distillers up there, they need an AI solution, right? Or at least to have that discussion. So I think 2021 we get it booked.
Fantastic.
All right.
All right. Well, Prateek, thank you for your time. It's absolutely flown by. I think we've been talking for over almost approaching the hour now. Well, no, 50 minutes. But great fun.
Thank you, Tom, Will, for having me. It's I really enjoyed it. Really interesting topics, and and I think it's a topic of great importance. But I think more than that, we covered the most important topic, which is Scotch, which, yeah.
You're definitely coming back.
We need a part two for sure.
That's good.
All right. Well, thank you, gentlemen. Pleasure as always. And for those of you listening, keep tuned for episode 5 coming out, where we're going to speak to John Grant about making water smarter, and even with bow ties as well, right, Will? So yeah.
I don't know. I may not make that one.
You can't leave me in the cold on that one. Come on.
No, I won't leave you alone with John Graham. Trust me. All right. Hey, Prateek, wonderful to see you. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Will.
Thank you, guys. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Be well, guys.